Facilities Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. I'm Lon Rosenblum. I'm the committee chair for this committee, and I'm here with my vice chair, Ms. Sarah Dunn, and our other committee members, Ms. Lydia Solomon and Mr. DJ Thornton. We have our administrative liaison, Mr. Ken Morris, our student representative, Kirsten Achampong, and Mr. Brian Pauling from administration, and our superintendent, Dr. Ken Batchelor. We'll start with administrative remarks.
So just one, I'd like to just give a quick update on Ithan as part of my administrative remarks. So we held our pre-bid or our pre-construction meeting last week where we got together with the construction management team from SiteLogic, along with all of the awarded prime contractors at Ithan Elementary School. There were several administrators there, along with John Wagner, the principal. And we just did a pre-construction kickoff, went over a lot of administrative things, preparing for hopefully mobilization and groundbreaking in April. That is our goal. We also reviewed the current early tree removal project that was previously awarded as a change order to Manifold. So this week they started surveying and putting up erosion and settlement controls there in preparation of the early tree removal piece. So,
Thank you. Do we have any live or recorded comments? None. Do you want me to repeat everything? No. Okay. We're going to pull the 4.01 Ithan Elementary land development approval for now, and we'll defer that to a future finance or facilities meeting. But we hope to still keep on track with that. We're going to move to 4.02 Ithan Elementary Plan Con Part G.
all right. Thank you. So this evening, I want to introduce Steve Behrens from Breslin Architecture. He is zooming in live stream with us here. So Steve's going to kind of go over. This is the last part of Plan Con. It is just an approval process. It's an administrative function to complete the necessary paperwork and different sections of Plan Con that are tied directly into the Act 34 with regards to Ithan Elementary School. So I'm going to hand it over to Steve. He's going to give you a brief overview of exactly what Part G is. I do have the document if you want to scroll through it or go over anything. You have the document in front of you as well. But turn it over to Mr. Behrens.
Evening, everyone. It's good to be here. Thank you for allowing me to zoom in. As Mr. Morris explained, it is a bit of a pro forma exercise, but I don't want to miss the milestone that it does represent in the project with the receipt of bids, with the successful bid event that occurred, with the project being substantially under budget. That's what makes this a bit of an easy exercise. So I don't want to miss that in the presentation. But Plan Con Part G is required by the Act 34 process. It's a Department of Education form, and it allows us to account for the bids as well as other associated costs of the project following the receipt of bids. It then documents those, and it includes some information received from the contractors relative to the division of costs between building and site, and that's all in the document before you. And in the absence of the Plan Con process, the Plan Con reimbursement process, this is still a required process, required approval, I should say, but it will essentially go in the file as evidence that we followed the law in this regard with respect to the Act 34 approvals. So the real bottom line is relative to the limit That is the aggregate building expenditure, which is the calculated limit. We've talked about this several times in the past. And then the maximum building construction cost, which was defined by the results of the bid. And the difference between those two is the buffer that we've referred to. And the buffer in this case is a very comfortable $2.9 million, a little bit over that. And that's a great buffer to have on a project of this scale moving forward into construction. And because of that delta, no other second hearing or anything along those lines is required, and so we can move forward. As we move forward, any change orders or additional costs within those certain categories would be continued to be measured against the limit. But with that healthy buffer, we're very confident that we won't have any problems in that regard moving forward. So that's the high-level explanation. Certainly willing to answer any questions you may have after having reviewed the documents.
I have a really nitpicky question. This form says that it expired on June 30th, 2012. I assume nobody gave you a more updated form in 14 years?
Yeah, very observant. No, that there has been no updated forms, and that is because the Plan Con process is technically in moratorium. And but we still take that form and we update it manually each year with the revised updated per pupil cost, which that actually was received already for the 26 calendar year. That number wasn't. We were able to include that. And so, yes, the forms themselves are old. The numbers, the calculations within them are updated and current.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? I think that's it. Steve, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. I look at this and I think this is another level of accountability that we have for everyone, all the parties involved. So thank you. Thanks for zooming in.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the courtesy of allowing me to do so. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. So we'll move that along to board approval on March 24th business meeting. We'll move on to 4.03, Ithan Elementary Special Testing Agency.
Okay. As part of the Ithan project, we have a need to contract with a third-party testing agency to perform specific testing as required and outlined in the specifications for items such as concrete, steel, the dirt that they bring in and level out the ground, the compaction testing, and things of that nature. And so it's really a detailed checks and balances, verifications of a lot of key items that have to do with the integrity and structural aspect of the building. So I do want to introduce Damian Spar at this point, only because SiteLogic was intricate in helping us put together this third-party testing RFP. So we did develop a set of specifications. It did not have to be, it wasn't publicly advertised, but we did go out to multiple qualified vendors who perform these special type of specialty testing. And so with the help of SiteLogic, we developed that RFP. We sent it out, got responses, evaluated the different firms, and have a recommendation here this evening. So one thing I want to point out with regards to this has always been part of our overall Ithan cost. This is captured in the soft cost, so this is not additional above and beyond what we're spending on Ithan right now. So if I could pull up the special testing here. So we went out to multiple firms. We did get a response from a group called CMT, a engineering firm, Barry Isaac, Kleinfelder, who has been a wonderful partner for us with regards to environmental due diligence on the site and some other things with regards to retaining walls, so they're very familiar with the site. And then also David Blackmore, who's very well known in the construction industry for their third-party testing and verification. These are also things, some of these testing results also get packaged and sent to the township for record as well. So out of that, a little varying of the bids, but David Blackmore did come in at the lowest. So we evaluated to make sure that they captured the scope of work that was outlined, again, taken from the job specifications, and also looked at their quantities should we need some additional services. So just to give you an example, within each specification, and I'll just touch base on concrete. There was an estimate of how many yards of concrete would be used for the site. Each truck that comes in gets tested individually. So there was an estimate on how many trucks we would use, and then within that, there's several tests, such as an air test, a slump test, different brake test to make sure that the concrete is strong enough. And so they took those estimates of testing to come up with their base bid. And then we also asked them to provide, should we need one more test, right? Whether that's a concrete test or a compaction test, what would that cost be over and above the base bid? Likewise, if we estimated that we had 9 trucks of concrete and we only had 8 and we have 1 test left over, we get that money back. Okay, so this is kind of a base bid on what we thought was going to be the appropriate amount of tests for the project. So they did come in at the lowest at $100,265. Again, we de-scoped them, made sure that they captured everything, and we're very confident that they'll do a good job for us. SiteLogic also has a lot of history for projects with David Blackmore. So we'd like to make that recommendation that we go into contract with them for Ithan special testing. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I was comforted to know that you've had such experience with David Blackmore, considering the difference in the bids. So can you just speak a little bit to the large gap?
So when these prices are put together, effectively what they're doing is they're giving us a unit price for their tests and a unit price for their hours when they have staff on site. In the case of David Blackmore, sometimes I feel, and this is my opinion, this is not necessarily fact, I feel that they tend to have some advantages because either, sometimes they're a smaller firm, and in this case, I'm not sure they're smaller than everybody else, but I think they are. And this is their core competency business. So where some of the other firms, their core competency is design engineering, and this is a part of what they do, that sometimes affects those unit prices that they're able to give. All of the firms that responded are quite reputable and very good. And I think generally what I have seen over time is they have kept their prices, their unit cost reasonable, and I have attributed it to them being kind of local, not a big firm, and that it's a core competency of theirs as opposed to a subset of skills that they market.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, maybe you explained this, but I didn't catch it. So this bid is the maximum amount this could be, and if it's anything under that, we get it back?
This bid is based on the estimates of the amount of testing that we would need for the various different components, such as compaction, fasteners. So if we exceed that amount, so let's just say we needed 9 tests, and for whatever reason we recognize that we need a tenth. Then the unit prices are there. We would pay an additional amount for the test.
I see.
But likewise, should we only need 8 of the 9, then the price would be lower.
So this is based on what you submitted? You think these were the tests we were going to need?
So,
that everybody
so
bid on?
based on the bid specifications that were put together by the engineering and architectural firm, and then, we went through the whole exercising where Walt put together the construction estimate and how many yards of concrete and things like that, we were able to pool, each truck holds X amount of yards of concrete. We'll need X amount of tests, right? Because there'll be X amount of trucks. So
Okay.
things like that, yes.
I mean, I know this isn't a huge amount compared to this whole process, but how often is this way off?
Way off? It's not way off often. It's never right on. So usually, and we provide the estimates, so we provide the number of tests that we think it's going to take. I will tell you, I will always sit here and tell any school district, if we need more testing to make sure it's good, we're going to pay for more testing, because that's what we want to do. What we've done here is we've tried to look at it and say, what do we think this is going to take, so we can approve unit costs and basically approve those unit costs up to a not to exceed. If we get to that not to exceed because of they're bringing 2 trucks in at a time instead of getting it all on one, or whatever that might be, as long as it's not a problem that's being caused on purpose by one of the contractors or something like that, then we'll spend some more. So I can't tell you how far it would be off. It's never like double. Oftentimes we put a pretty large amount of money in the budget to handle that. I think our recommended budget's going to have probably closer to 200,000, but it doesn't become that far off. It's usually we start on the low side because we like to press the firm into trying to conserve their hours and do the right thing. We don't want them to be absent because then they're not watching, but we want them to be efficient. So we don't give them all that we possibly could, and we kind of try and steer them in the direction of being frugal.
All right, so now this is like remedial. Just explain to me again why we have to do this.
Sure.
Why is this required?
So I'll just revert. Concrete's probably the easiest. So when a truck of concrete comes in, right, it's mixed at the concrete plant. And that mix is specified and spelled out in our specifications of what the air quantity should be, what the moisture quantity should be, how much moisture should be in the rocks before it's mixed, and then what the strength of the concrete should be. So when the truck comes in, they do a couple things. They measure how much air is in the concrete. They measure the water content by a thing called a slump test. And then they take samples back, and in a controlled setting, they break each sample at 7 days, 14 days, and 28 days. So each concrete section, and whether it's sidewalks or footings, have typically a different break pressure or pounds per square inch. So 4,000 is a typical. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that concrete achieves 4,000, takes at least 4,000 PSI at 28 days to break that concrete. If the concrete breaks in less than 4,000, it's deemed defective and has to be replaced. If it breaks at more than 4,000, it's a bonus. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's checks and balances to make sure that we're not getting inferior, sloppy concrete that might not be structurally have the integrity that we want.
So this is something that we would want. This is protecting us.
And this is somebody that's working for you to ensure that the contractor's providing quality. In a place that's probably more vulnerable to an overage than concrete is that when they put fill in, they can only put some fill so high. So fill might be 6 inches or 8 inches or something like that. Then they have to roll it or do whatever they have to do to compress the fill so that it doesn't eventually, shift and cause a problem like that. And when you're talking about infilling several feet, testing that fill for compaction happens over and over and over again, and depending on what happens with weather. So that's where we tend to see the costs, the quantity go up, and therefore we need more units of it for that type of testing. But really, that is in place in a third-party setting so that the contractor is not watching their own quality. Because I've seen projects where the contractor watches their own quality with a testing agency, they don't do the compaction, then there's settlement later, and that's not a good day on a construction site.
So is this not something you can do?
This is not something that we do now. This is something that uniquely qualified firms do, and you're looking at some of the best
These
ones
are
in the
them.
area to do
Okay.
it.
All right, thank you.
Damien, will they stay with the project until all the concrete has been
Yep.
poured?
Concrete, soil compaction, there's tests for asphalt to make sure that the asphalt has the right characteristics to it. Anything for mortar, so when we're putting masonry up, mortar gets tested for compression as well. When steel goes up, they're looking at welds, they're looking at the torque on bolts. They're basically making sure that, in almost every case, the materials are tight and the materials are not going to be moving in ways that they shouldn't. And building code requires it, Mr. Schrader just reminded me.
Thank you for that.
So that's why these testing reports get packaged up and sent to the township for record too as well. So.
Okay.
I had one just academic question. One of the engineers recommended pyritic sulfur testing. It was UP2. It was under Barry Isaac, and I just wondered why that's. But nobody else bid it, so I didn't know if it was just an addition they were suggesting or if it's.
So I have on my sheet not applicable, and then 0 and 0.
Okay.
So it wasn't applicable to the project.
It may have been something extra they were offering in case we needed it.
Well, it's just, it was a line item so there's standard things that you ask for, right?
Okay.
It might not be specific. So this one was one of the things that's often required, but it's not applicable to this job. So.
Got it.
Yeah, David Blackmore just put in 0 where other ones said, well, this doesn't apply to this project.
Okay.
So.
And then I assume from a calculation standpoint, I noticed that the concrete, the FL testing, everybody bid it a little differently. So some people bid it per test, one person bid it per day, and then Blackmore bid it per square foot. I'm assuming you guys did the math to make sure.
Yeah, that's
Worked out.
part of the D-scope is making sure that we do those calculations so we can say, if we're buying it the way that the vendor would like to provide it, is that going to make sense when compared to the other vendors?
So this is totally nitpicky, but actually for the sulfur, one person did bid that, but I don't even know what that is, so I don't know that we need that, but.
I think what Mr. Morris said is it's not applicable, but I just wanted to make sure there
Oh, yeah,
wasn't a reason.
but somebody did give a
thought-
price for it,
Yeah,
but.
if it's not applicable, I just want to make sure we check that.
So I do apologize. I had to blow up the screen. It was really small. I was actually looking at UP4 instead of UP2. And I don't know why they put a price in there for that, but it's not applicable to the project, and it didn't change the base. Right. So we did not de-scope them just because of the price to which they were. CMT and Blackmore were the lowest, and those were really where we focused all of our energy. So.
Yeah, I think this piece of the project is probably pretty invaluable
Yes.
in the whole
it
basis.
is.
Okay, so if everyone is okay with it, we'll move it on to the business meeting on the 24th. Now we're going to move to the administrative building, the 4.04 Guaranteed Energy Savings Act advertisement.
All right. So for this, before I get started, I would like to reintroduce David Schrader, who, as you know, we recently went under contract with to help guide us through potential renovation here for the district office. And that's kind of what prompted this, taking a look at Giza. You know, and Damian Spar is here tonight to do a presentation with regards to just helping everybody become informed on what Giza is. We've had a lot of conversations over the months about whether it was a good fit for this project. And so there'll be a little bit more discussion about that. But, you know, the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act, or GIZA, is really a procurement method. So we're all familiar with public bidding, right, with Ithan, temporary HVAC, the high school project. We're also familiar with purchasing consortiums, such as Sourcewell, which we used with the high school HVAC, Keystone Purchasing Network with roofing, Co-Stars for other products and services that we purchase. So this is another mechanism or another way of procuring services, and really more related to smaller construction and system upgrades. And so we feel that the district office is a good fit for this type of procurement. And while we're talking about the administration building, I do just want to point out that we're going out for advertisement for a Giza firm. And it's, while we do propose to use it here at the district administration, it is something then, once we do the advertisement and we go under contract with a firm and select a firm, that we can do as many or as little projects as we want. We can do one project with that firm, or we could do 100 projects with that firm, as long as they qualify for within the guidelines of GIZA. So the firm that we're going out to solicit and advertise firm would be just that. They would become our firm, and we would utilize them when we see fit, just like we do with the other purchasing mechanisms that I spoke about earlier. Until a time where you know, we maybe weren't happy with the firm, or enough time has passed that the board felt that it was in our best interest to maybe resolicit. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Again, I want to thank Damian Spar, who, you know, has been a great partner in SiteLogic, volunteered tonight to come in and inform everybody a little bit more about what Giza is. He's been doing it for many, many years. This is new to us, so we just want to make sure we deliver the correct message. So.
Thank you. Was there anything that you wanted to
No, I'll
say?
just support as you go.
As I go, you can chip in. So if you look at the second page, what I'd like to do for everyone here tonight is kind of take how Giza is used and apply it to the experiences that Radnor Township School District has had and some of the things that I've seen here, and really take it and say, what would it look like if you applied it to the project being designed by Schrader Group? When you look at the challenges that I have seen the district have in its previous project and the challenges that we even faced as we worked on Ithan, public bidding not allowing for complete pre-qualification and best value selection of subcontractors was quite prominent. We've used cooperative purchasing at Radnor Township School District in really good ways, but there's limits to what cooperative purchasing can really do for you. We've looked at trying to focus on local firms or potentially union firms and really start to look at how we can get the best, most reputable subcontractors and workers in working on construction at Radnor, which is really precluded by the way that things are set up in public bid. And it's compounded in the case where you have a new project and you've got Act 34 limitations. Getting the highest caliber contractors and reputable contractors that you can trust are going to pay their bills and that you can push and pull levers to make sure that they are doing those things is also something that's been important. And finally, change orders being prevalent in construction has always been a concern, and that's been something that is much more prevalent in design, bid, build, or public bid than it is for cooperative purchase or GIZA-type contracts. So when we looked at the challenges, we said, these challenges really set the district up for looking at the type of procurement that wasn't available to you really at all for Ithan. So in Pennsylvania, under the school code, and this goes back to 1949, design, bid, build, or public bidding is what we use to build new buildings. It's traditionally what's used on very large projects. As projects get smaller, different procurement types are used, and sometimes a mixture are used. But the problem with design, bid, build, or public bidding, you have the highest risk for a poor contractor because you can't disallow people easily or firms easily even if you think that they are not qualified. And because of the nature, or if they're not qualified, I should say, Ms. Dunn, because of the nature of the design and then a price and then go to construction without any collaboration, there's a really large possibility for change orders, and there's change orders on virtually any job. They have to be quite small or quite lucky not to have any at all. Guaranteed Energy Savings Act doesn't work on new construction, but it does work on renovations where the things that are being renovated have to do with conserving or reducing energy or operations costs. So we'll talk about this later and we'll go through it in the room, but when you start to get into renovations that affect systems in the building envelope, it starts to make a guaranteed energy savings project more palatable and it brings it into focus. What happens under a Guaranteed Energy Savings Act project is once you select that GIZA contractor, or it's also called an energy service company or ESCO, you've fulfilled your requirement for competition. Now, and I have seen school districts not bid the work out at all, but just go pick a certain subcontractor and go. Typically, school districts like to bid to several qualified subcontractors where they put a list together with the professionals that are on the project and the ESCO, but you're starting to gain control. And because there's collaboration, there is the reduced risk for change orders. There can be change orders in these contracts, but they are usually because the district would like to add something and not because, oh, we missed this, or we didn't read the drawings right, or we didn't look around the corner in the building. Cooperative purchase is the third type of procurement. That can be used quite nicely because it can be collaborative. There are many times where depending on which cooperative purchase mechanism you use, you can use it. Again, it doesn't work to build new buildings, and you really can't renovate a large-scale building with it. But you can start to look at these things and figure out what's the best thing for you based on your experience and what you're looking to get from your project. So I talked through this a little bit with how GIZA is used. Guaranteed Energy Savings Act projects years ago were put there when costs of construction were down and utility costs were kind of high, so that when an owner saves a certain amount of money, they would take that amount of money they were going to save over 20 years and buy improvements today. As utility costs generally stayed low and construction costs went through the roof, you were buying less and less under that type of mechanism. So the state in 2016 recognized that in legislation by saying you can use operational savings, meaning if you're going to do a project and you want to do it with a Guaranteed Energy Savings Act, you can simply use whatever energy savings or utility savings you have to buy down the project. So effectively, you can use it without it having to self-fund from energy or utility savings. That was a big deal because it was the legislature saying, we recognize that we want to have some level of design build and available to public agencies, and this is the way that we're going to do it. So design build collaboration, as I said, reduces the change orders. What happens is when you're working through the building with the subcontractors, while you're designing it and before they're really pricing it, and you're talking through openly, what could happen here, what could happen there, you play those scenarios out, and the things that would traditionally become change orders are eliminated because they're taken care of in the design and the scope at the time. It's that collaboration that eliminates the change orders. You still pay for the work, but you don't pay for it in a change order, and you pay for it more cost effectively when it's part of the bid. The eligible scopes, and I'm going to use this room as an example, eligible scopes are really anything that's reducing utilities or saving utilities. So while there isn't necessarily plumbing here, plumbing replacements is part of that. When you start to look at the HVAC system, the HVAC that you see, the lighting, electrical systems, taking the ceiling out to get to the HVAC is all part of that. Replacing windows, dealing with water infiltration on the exterior, and replacing roofs, all part of what is GISA scope. So when you start to think about what we want to do in this building, you start to see that you would have the option to do that. The other thing that happens with GISA is they've recognized that there's economy of presence. When folks are here doing work already, you can start to do, they allow you, it's called the 15% rule, you can do some other work because you're already here doing it outside of what fits into that GISA definition. And so there's ways that you could look at this building and say, what would I do in this building so that I could start to put some of these procurement methods together to gain all the control that you want and still get the project done in a manner that's befitting. At the end of all of this, and that gain control is in the better subcontractors, improved quality, really improved schedule, and I think less risk with schedule. And I will tell you, and a lot of times, and this isn't just my experience, but what happens is there's a collaboration with the subcontractors and the owner. Sometimes things change. Owners have different needs. They might have operations that need to take place, and the schedule has to change. In public bidding, somebody says, oh, you impacted my schedule, give me some money. What I have seen, and this is not just the company that I work for, but I've seen by and large those companies working with the owner saying, okay, we're going to work together, and you're not going to have that schedule cost impact. You may have the time, but you're willing to give up the time so that you can accommodate something that's changing for you, but you don't have to spend money to do that. So those are all very positive pieces about GISA procurement. At the end, it's also based upon performance. So anybody that is doing these projects should be able to say to you, here's what we project you're going to save or reduce your energy or utility costs by, and then you can go, there's several different ways to measure it, but we recommend going to the meter, and you should be able to see from the year before you built it to the year after, that reduction. And so it is performance-based, and that's a whole different way of thinking about construction. So as we're starting to move forward through this, and you understand what those scopes of work are that work for GISA, I'll tell you that in this type of building, because you can do the exterior envelope of the building, and you can do the work inside, that 15% to me would be moving the walls around within the building. Then the other packages that you would have to do through cooperative purchase would be site work out front, flooring, casework, maybe some things like that. But what you're hearing, or I guess what I should say is what you're not hearing, is you don't have to have the general contractor because you're going right to those folks that provide those items in the cooperative purchase. So the process highlights are you have an advertisement, you have an RFQ, you select a firm. After the firm is selected, and in this case, I'm going to speak to things that I've done with Schrader Group before, a Guaranteed Energy Savings Act provider would kind of pull up next to Schrader Group, do estimates as you go through the process, start to figure out who those subcontractors would be that would work, collaborate, and some of that collaboration happens, and a lot of it happens after the design is complete enough that we're not walking around the building looking at things that we're really not designing yet. But after the design gets so far, we're collaborating with subcontractors, getting pricing. Then, interestingly enough, having a conversation about what does the price look like, what scope are we buying, how do we make those changes? And they're not change orders, they're actually negotiations. And they're actually choosing your scope and choosing what you want to spend, and you're making choices before you even sign a construction contract. And so it kind of mirrors a single prime delivery method. It's just that it also comes with the benefit of having that negotiation. We have used this to fast track projects when necessary. We've used it to get some parts of the project finished early or do early procurement. There's a lot of problems in construction that this approach can solve. Now, if you look at the contractual arrangement that you see in front of you here, that is generally what you have at Ithan. You have several different, and there's one missing, it would be fire protection. You have several different prime contracts directly to the owner, but not really linked together. You have a professional agreement with the architect, and you have an agreement with the CM. So you have two professional agreements, and at Ithan, I think we have 6 prime contracts. Every time you have a contract, you have one more point of potential dispute. And the more you have pointing back at each other, potentially causing a dispute through you contractually. When you look at a strict Giza project that's not combined with other things, which is the next slide, you'll see you have a contract with an architect. The engineer for mechanical, electrical, plumbing is within the Giza, and all of the subcontractors, whether it's roofing, windows, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, et cetera, all sit within the Giza. So you have one design build contract and you have one contract with the architect. It simplifies things. Not every project allows that simplification. When you look at this project, if we were to apply this now, in the next slide, you'll see the idea is you'd have a Giza contractor that is coordinating those cooperative purchase contracts. So Giza has its own subs that we just talked about. Then the site work, build casework or cupboards and things like that, and flooring, for example, would be direct with the owner. The beauty of that is those cooperative purchase contracts, you want them to be the least risky ones, the least likely to have major problems, the least likely to have claims. And that's kind of how you get a hybrid contractual arrangement.
Maybe one comment about that.
Sure.
So in the prior slide, if you go back quickly, you can see that connection between the architect and the MEP engineer, so mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, under the Giza. If you fast forward to the other one, we typically are still connected to the Giza contractor for the mechanical, electrical, plumbing design.
Good call.
So there's a little bit of a kind of a hybrid between those two slides to make this work.
And well,
I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth. Yeah, I guess the only line that we're missing in the hybrid is just the line going to the architect.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
You're also seeing some slightly different procurement on the next slide, in that some of these may be done through cooperative purchasing agreements. You may get into this, but that 15% of incidental work that's general construction related, you will likely go over that in a project like this, and so we will pick and parse different parts of the contract to turn into cooperative purchasing. You'll pick simple things that aren't that difficult to coordinate. You'll pick carpeting, you'll pick ceiling, well, the ceilings will go with the Giza, but things like that that are not going to have an impact on the coordination between all of those different services that you're getting.
Exactly right.
Can I ask a question just while you have this, while you're looking at this? You asked a couple slides. I'm going to ask when you're done because you're all finished.
All right.
Sorry.
I'll keep it going. So the next slide is just a couple of comments about if you were to take this approach here at the district administrative office, it allows for your pre-qualifications of subcontractors and vendors, either through cooperative purchase or through GIZA. You can start to choose local contractors. It's easier to work in union contracting. You get to negotiate the final scope and cost. And every GIZA contractor does a little bit differently. Typically, when I do that, I work up until right before contract signature. And you could even approve, $1 million on one night, and the contract would come to you, and it would be slightly lower than that because contractors provided some buyout before you sign the contract. So we just keep working those numbers down and negotiating to get exactly the best that we can get for the money that we want to spend. This approach reduces all the project risks, and the scopes fit here with a little bit of work through some of the cooperative purchase. Importantly, Schrader Group has done this, more than a dozen times, I'm sure.
Easily.
The contractor controls are much higher, and you're really not on the GIZA contractor the way that the law is written. You're not spending any money through the design period. The GIZA contractor is designing that, and you don't pay for any of that design until you sign the contract. When you sign the contract for construction, the first invoice that comes to you includes the work that's been done to date for pre-construction or any design services, but you basically are on the bank for the GIZA contractor for that whole design period. And typically what we've done, and I think David's probably seen this with other vendors, through that process, you're kind of getting some of that construction management, pre-construction service too, so that in collaboration with the architect, the GIZA contractor is kind of showing you, this is what it's going to cost, this is what our decisions are going to look like. Then you get that pricing in, and you get to make much better decisions than you had with alternates on a public bid day, because it was take it or leave it instead of try and figure it out and make it work. I don't think I need to hit that last slide because we've talked about all of those, and I'd really be happy to take questions.
Okay, I'll open it up.
So this has to increase the cost of the project, right?
I don't think that it does, and we've actually done projects where we've bid the work, public bid, and we've done a GIZA, and they're very similar in cost. I don't believe that it increases the contract value and the overall project value at all.
All right, so I think I don't understand this. Haven't you just worked yourself out of a job?
As a construction manager, I have.
Yeah, because the GIZA
I don't want to be a
guide-
construction manager on this job. This is going to be a
Got
pain.
it. Okay.
This is the way you want to do this.
Shh, don't let them
It's
hear.
a lot easier. It is a lot easier to build a brand new building than it is to do a renovation in a structure that has all the components that this one does.
But so aren't we just renaming the construction manager a GIZA?
You are a little, and so I'll say it this way. The GIZA contractor is kind of a construction manager that is at risk for the cost of the work. So when we talk about what type of construction companies there are, construction managers at risk are the ones that perform the work and hold the subcontracts. In the case of Ithan, when we're a construction manager, it's called an agency construction manager, and that's a consultant. So yes, this works me out of a job as a consulting construction manager, but it gives you a better product and a better process with a construction manager that's holding the contracts for all that construction, as opposed to having all those different prime contracts.
But then who's holding that person accountable? So then you're taking on the construction manager.
No,
job.
no,
Well,
the part of
so
the
to
GIZA
s-
is
so
the
to speak.
construction. Yeah. I don't know that I
Well,
want to get hung up
I think I can
on
help you. I
terms.
think this is a really good question.
But-
So, in terms of the schedule, the owner is generally going to be doing that because they're saying this is when we need to be in. And I'm going to focus on the easy things: schedule, cost, quality, and safety. In terms of the cost, once you sign that agreement, because of the way the GEES is structured, you really don't have the opportunity for change orders unless you say, you know what, I want to add something on. One place that I've experienced a change order is when an owner said, that ceiling up there doesn't have asbestos. And we got up there and went, we think that it does, and it did. And so the owner paid to have that taken out. But the nuisance change orders that you've seen that have plagued you, you don't deal with those in a GESA project. So there isn't, one of the primary reasons that a construction manager is on site for a building like Ithan is they have to deal with change orders, not just the schedule. So the schedule, while it's being dictated by the owner, it's being controlled by the GESA contractor. Part of the quality comes from the architect because the architect still is a third party and does not work for the GESA contractor. I tend to like that because it's somebody that you can go to and say, does this look right? Because I can tell you, if he's coming to us and saying it doesn't look right architecturally for some reason, he's the arbiter and he gets to decide. If he doesn't think it looks right and it might be more of an engineering thing, you've got my attention anyway because there's a design professional that says they have a question. So something needs to be corrected. So typically I like to see a third-party designer, as we've shown you here, be there so that there's some additional third-party quality oversight. In terms of safety, that falls directly on the contractors.
But so what's the incentive to keep the cost down? Because you pick this person and then they're going to say, this is what it's going to cost.
Part of it is
As
that,
opposed to a bid. Then you have people
well, you still have bids.
competing with each other.
You still have bids. All of those things that we have within the GESA get bid out. So, for
I see.
example,
I see.
you would have you'd have several plumbers that bid it, you'd have several, all those subcontractors are bidding, and we picked who got to bid. Not just anybody could bid, but we got to pick. Then all the rest of the costs that we have, we lay out for you and we show you. So you have a transparency that you don't see. So, for example, at Ithan, the general contractor's not showing you, they're giving you a schedule of values, but they're not showing you the details on where their costs are necessarily and what their sub-costs are and who got the job. You don't necessarily have a say in. So that's why it kind of holds itself accountable because of the transparency.
So all these subs were held to the rule that we still pick the lowest of the bidders for all of these?
No, you're not.
No.
I have seen more than once, but not often, because school districts tend to be more fiduciarily responsible than have another issue. But I have seen a few times where school districts have gotten a cost in and that the subcontractor with the lowest cost all of a sudden got busy, or the school district knew of something that they didn't like or whatever, and they didn't necessarily pick the lowest cost. Because there's a negotiation point there, you know, we're able to start to talk to the second lowest bidder and see if there's ways that they can get closer to the price or meet the price of the lowest bid if they were close. You know, it's not, we won't bid shop them and punish these folks for doing more to begin with, but if an owner says, we don't want the lowest bidder for some good reason, there are times that low bidder isn't taken in the subcontract realm. So just to punctuate that, at Ithan, when you have the site work contractor underneath the general, for example, the site work contract, if the general contractor bid $1 million and he has a site work contractor that's at 900,000 and another one at 7, he may not take the guy at 700,000 because he knows that guy doesn't have it right and he doesn't have the manpower. He'll still be under what he bid for the project, but he's keeping that money. And what we're trying to do here is figure all that stuff out before you sign your contract. So we're tightening up the costs and the scope, and any of those project savings aren't going to the general contractor or the GESA contractor, but they're reverting back to the district. And that's part of the way that costs are kept down in this model.
Right, and I just want to remind, one thing that we didn't touch on, this doesn't change the process that we have established with this project and through the Schrader Group. So this doesn't change us coming to the board after schematic design to get approval to move on to design development. And with that, there'll be an estimate. And then from design development to construction documents, and there'll be an estimate at that point. It doesn't change all those approval processes. And so we're not giving the project to a Giza firm and they're just going to tell us what they think it's going to cost, right? It's a very transparent process with all of the same approvals that we would have had if we went with the typical public bid. Again, it's an alternative procurement method that creates a lot of control, a lot of transparency, and yes, we do, as administration, we do embed ourselves a little bit more into the process, which, in my opinion, only helps. Such as we've embedded ourselves into the roofing projects, we've embedded ourselves into the large HVAC upgrade at the high school, and things of that nature. So I just wanted to add that clarity.
I had a couple clarification questions. The Giza, does it usually get bid as a flat rate or an hourly rate or a percentage of the bids the way the contractors are?
So, and I can speak for how we price that. So when we price our work, you have subcontractors. Sometimes owners will decide they're going to buy the permits or the permits are included. It depends. But you have the subcontractor costs, insurance, bonds, all those types of things which are laid out. There's general conditions, and really, there's overhead and profit, which is all shown, just like everywhere else. So those are kind of your construction costs. And to get to those subcontract costs, which are the biggest bulk, we're bidding that and having competition. Outside of that, there's pre-construction costs that look a lot like a construction manager, and there's design costs if we're designing mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and then there's construction phase costs because there's somebody here overseeing and coordinating all the work, and all that's laid out. So the answer is there's professional services, and really there's overhead and profit, and that's where a guaranteed energy savings contractor that's showing you everything in this open book manner is making their money.
Right. And the MEP costs, we have those regardless, whether they're a sub-consultant and a pass-through cost through David Schrader, or they come directly from a Giza company. So we're not adding like those design principles because we're going this route. Some of those things were already included in a construction project such as this with the magnitude, just a lot of the logistics and stuff with regards to being in close proximity to the middle school, limited staging areas, limited parking, things like that. We would go and ask for the assistance of a construction manager anyway. You know what I mean? Because we don't have the bandwidth to run or the expertise to run this magnitude of a project. So we would need a construction management firm like we do for Ithan to help us with this type of. So that's also included in the Giza, right? So
This talks about, when you pick your Giza, you have a competitive bid and it's from pre-qualified. Oh, that's the pre-qualified subcontractors and vendors. So how do we go about picking a Giza? I assume I know Site Logic is one. There are others in the area. Mm-hmm. And do we engage Schrader to help us? In any kind of formal way, or is it more just an informal? Oh, that Giza is a nightmare, and we have massive personality or professional clashes with them. Please don't use them.
Right. So so we have to follow very specific guidelines that are set by the state with regulations. So this advertising is one of those things, right? So we have to publicly advertise for this like we would a public bid.
So it's not like the architects where we can pick a pool and say these are the ones we want to talk
Yes,
to. We
so-
have to make it available to everybody.
Yes.
Okay,
Right. So
that's
there's
fine.
a difference, and such like when I say we went out to bid for the special testing, right? We sent it out to the firms that we knew were qualified to do it and have some type of history. We have to publicly advertise it, and it's an RFQ. It's a request for qualifications. So we're looking at what are the qualifications of the Giza firm, where that differs from an RFP, right, where you're looking for proposal. A lot of times you're going with the lowest price. We're gonna dive deep into what their qualifications are, what other projects have they done, on-time tasks, magnitude, references, things like that, right? And then we have to descope that somehow. So we'll descope that internally, but then we'll rely on David and their expertise for some guidance too. And then, so we have a timeline. It was in the administrative section, and I can pull that back up of where, we send the advertisement out, we make the RFQ available, we receive those, we evaluate them, and then our goal is to come back in April to facilities with hopefully a recommendation and a board approval in April. So, it's a very legal process on doing that. So.
Thank you.
DJ, did you?
Damien, I'm asking these questions in part because I figure if you're bidding on it, you can't be helping us with it. So I want to make sure I understand it all in advance.
Okay, I think DJ said that.
It was answered, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I just have a couple questions, and I'm asking you as a layperson in this process. So there seems to be a lot of room for negotiations and collaboration in this. When you go out in the GISA, when you get bids from the contractors, is there any kind of negotiating in there where if you get 3 bids and there's a low bid, a middle bid, and a high bid, but you really like that high bid, you like that contractor, are those bids private, or can you, am I being?
They're not, you mean, are they private to us in the process? No.
Are they
They're-
private to the bidders?
Yes.
Can you go back so
We
you can't go?
we don't share that.
You don't share that.
When we do this, we don't share that with the bidders until after there's an award. So
Okay,
if
so-
there's if you have 3 bidders and you really like the highest bidder, we won't necessarily go to that guy and say, this is where your number has to be. That's not necessarily appropriate. But what we do is we go back and say, okay, we've descoped you, we know what you've got in your bid and what you don't have in your bid, and we've told you how to complete it so that you have everything you need, and that's how we avoid change orders. And then we ask them for a best and final price. If that high bidder drops down and gets close to or at the low bidder because they're aggressive in a best and final, that savings reverts back to the district, and that number is what goes in for those subcontracts. So there's opportunity there, but it's not a bid shopping opportunity.
Okay, it's a more creative way to do it, but it is,
You-
There is some
there is a
negotiating in
negotiation,
there,
it's just
yes.
not bid shopping.
okay.
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
Yep.
And then, when I look at all of these, it seems to be, if we don't go with the public bidding, the single GISA would likely be the most costly versus hybrid? Is that,
The single
Or-
GISA really can't work here because you're going to have to do the site work as something else. You could publicly bid the site work, or because it doesn't fit into the GISA profile of
okay,
scopes of work. So I'm thinking that if you were to apply that here, your site work, your flooring, and your casework and things like that would probably be those direct contracts with the owner under that hybrid model that you
Got
see
it.
as the last chart.
okay,
And then everything else generally should fall under GISA.
okay. Well, David, I'm glad you made that comment then, that connects that line to the architect.
Yeah, and we've actually looked at that a lot. You should want whoever the GISA contractor is, because they're doing so much work, to coordinate the other contracts. And that way, they're they don't necessarily have responsibility for those contracts, but they're acting a little bit like a construction manager that you have on Ithan for those other contracts and keeping them all coordinated and in line.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any other questions.
I actually did have one more, sorry. I was looking at the timeline.
I just have a really stupid question. What's an RFQ versus an RFP?
Request for qualifications, RFQ, as opposed to request for proposal for an RFP.
And just one clarification, Damien mentioned that you wouldn't see fees design fees as part of that. The design fees that he's talking about are related to the Giza work. So if there are mechanical, electrical, plumbing work, that is going to be part of that Giza overall project fee. But we still have to design, we still have to do the site work. We still,
And they still have to
Thank you,
coordinate.
Damien.
So one of the things that we've done on other projects is if Schrader Group did this work, whether it was public bid or cooperative purchase or Giza, they should be paid the same fee to do it either way. So the model that we are using for, as a Giza contractor that we would use would be to fit our design fees under what it would be as if Schrader Group did the design of the things for architectural and site and then coordinated the work of the Giza designer, which is just like they would do for their mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer.
I thought about that, David, but I assumed you were going to make sure you got paid.
Thank you.
I have one question, and it's really a timing question, and I appreciate aggressive timing. You know, I always appreciate that, but I also appreciate realistic timing. So I just want to make sure if the RFQs are due April 8th, which I think is a Wednesday, I was looking at my calendar, and the facilities meeting is the following week on a Tuesday, and typically you make your recommendations by Friday. I'm just wondering if that leaves you enough time to really negotiate anything with the Giza, or if it needs to, I hate to say it, slip to May, but if that's, I guess what I would just say, maybe my preference from a facilities committee standpoint, and I'm open to hearing disagreement from my peers, but would be that you make sure you've got the best person, the best company selected, and if it has to slip, it has to slip.
No, it is aggressive, and it was meant to bring on the potential Giza firm early on in the process. So we're planning a kickoff next week with the Schrader Group for this building to meet with administration and really just go over a lot of the administration aspects of the project, what the agenda is going to be, the focus points, what we're going to cover over, try to establish a timeline and things of that nature. But the sooner we can get the Giza firm in on those talks and evaluations and walkthroughs through the building is just going to be, can we push it out to May? I'm sure we can. But with this RFQ, we do expect to see a decent response. But it's not like public bidding where we're going to be opening 15 responses, you know what I mean? But we do expect to attract some interest, so.
And then will there be, so like at the meeting on the 14th, at the committee meeting, would there be a presentation from the Giza, or is it really just going to be the paperwork of the numbers and?
No, we plan on hopefully having a presentation and having the person that we're recommending in front of you so that you
Okay.
could, yep.
Thank you.
And for the next one, this is just for the advertisement that we're moving forward to the 24th. So if everyone's okay.
Yeah, it's just to grant us permission to spend the money to put the advertisement. It is a legal advertisement, so it has to go in the legal section of the paper. So that grants us permission to do that.
Okay. All right. Is everyone in agreement? No?
No, I'm not in favor of moving forward on this process, but I realize I'm in the extreme minority here, so.
I just have like one question. I think what makes like the Giza approach so alluring is the fact that we have mitigated risk for change orders. So what exactly about the Giza approach mitigates that risk or lowers the risk for change
That's always a
orders?
question that needs to be addressed. When you do public bid, we have drawings that get designed, and we hand them to you as a contractor, and you put a number to those. You cannot qualify your bid. You can't say, well, I don't like this, and I'm going to leave this out. You have to interpret what's on the drawings with a little bit of information you got during the bid period through questions, and put a number down. That number comes in, and if you're the low bidder, anything that you interpreted differently, there's a change order request or there's a discussion about a change order. when we do a Giza project, there isn't that, you look at it, you price it back and forth, there's a collaboration. So those contractors are walking through the building, we're talking about the potential problems on those documents that were designed before we're building them. And that collaboration that happens within, particularly in a renovation, that helps us to do a couple things. One, identifies a problem that we can get rid of and not have a change order for. But two, we have contractors that work with us and they find other ways for us to do things more cost effectively and give the owner what they were looking for at a lower cost. So all that collaboration, one, really takes away and mitigates that change order problem. But two, it provides a collaboration to lower costs for the construction. So the owner's not getting a different program than they wanted, but they're getting something that's better. I'll give you an example. Just last night I was at South Williamsport. They wanted to put a generator in. They approved a cost for a generator. We found today, and we didn't mind telling the generator company, here's the number that you have to meet, because we found a generator that was in stock. So instead of waiting until like next fall to do the work, the generator can be done in the summertime. And so there's that type of thing that happens that either saves money or time, and it's because of that collaboration. And that's how those are eliminated.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move it to the March 24th business meeting for the 7,000 approval. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, new business?
I had one thing, Mr. Morrison, I apologize, I should have mentioned this to you beforehand, but it occurred to me when we were talking about some of this stuff. As it did when we had the high school project, there seemed to be unsettled transportation issues in the broader world in terms of shipping internationally. I hope that in these early meetings with our Ithan folks, we're clear that if there are things they need to order in advance, to get them in, understanding that lead times are rapidly changing across the globe. I know a lot of the materials we're asking them to use are domestic, but those domestic products are going to be in shorter supply as people are trying not to have to buy internationally. And if we have to buy internationally, the costs of energy and shipping are already skyrocketing in the last week or so.
So a couple things with that. Number one, their bid is their bid. So if fuel prices go up, right? Like that's unfortunate scenario. So there are prices that are locked in. But then, as part of last week's pre-construction meeting, they were also issued what's called notice to proceed. So the notice to proceed that went out to the contractors last week was to start doing that exact process, right? Get your submittals in so that the architects, especially long lead items, we had a long conversation about that with when they submit their submittals. If there are long lead items that they've recognized, that they're to pin those so that they can be looked at first by the architect or engineer and get approved. Once they have approval, they can then go ahead and submit the order. So we've started that process. We've kind of went over how the contractor can streamline different things and to make sure that those things are approved in a timely manner. So I think we've got that covered, but
Okay.
yeah,
No,
so
I
it's
just
just
I appreciate it because I
uncertainty.
remember with the high school there were things that we thought people were going to be ordering and they waited because they didn't need them, and then
Right.
the
And that
lead
was
times expanded quickly.
Yeah, and that was even a topic of conversation with the early tree removal, even though that change order had been approved prior some time back, and we were waiting for the conservation district to issue the permit. One of the things where get your submittals in for your precast materials that you needed for the ENS and the stormwater management for the the driveway, because some of those things could be long lead items. Now, fortunately for us, when they did the submittal, they were all stock items. There was no specialties there, but yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Any public comment? No? Okay, our next meeting is, April 14th, and we'll see all of these items on the March 24th. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.